So, hello and welcome. My name is Johanna Hlin Audunsdottir, and I'm Director for Climate and Sustainability at the National Power Company of Iceland, Landsvirkjun. It's an honor to be here today with distinguished guests about a really interesting topic on how we move beyond climate neutrality. Science is clear, and I think we are starkly reminded of that every day and here in this setting, with talks about the tipping points, amok, and how we are moving further and further away from 1.5 degrees Celsius. The science is clear that we have to move faster and that we have to go longer and further. That's why today's conversation is so important, because we're talking not only about how we reach net zero, but how we go beyond and continue the road. So today, we'll hear how this vision is going beyond, is being put into practice across Europe and the Nordic region through policy, innovation, and collaboration. And I'm happy to invite on stage Commissioner Dan Jørgensen and to introduce to us a bit how the EU is doing, what EU is doing on climate positivity. Welcome. Please take a seat here. So, what is the EU doing on climate positivity? Just briefly, before we introduce the next honored guest.
Just briefly, how are you transforming your entire economy? Yes. So, well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation and for gathering us here. I'm a little bit surprised that I have to go to the Nordic Pavilion to find the hottest setting, but you really have turned up the heat. We'll try and manage. If I faint, it's just lack of fluids, so give me some water. So, we are on the path in the European Union to decarbonize our economy. In one way, you could say that we are doing very well, quite fast. We break records every year. Last year, we deployed 78 gigawatts of new renewables. This year, it'll be closer to 89, and next year, hopefully, it'll be even faster. And if we look at our trajectory, we will reach our very ambitious targets of reducing our emissions by at least 55%. And now, just recently, it's also clear that we will indeed also deliver on our 90% target in 2040 and be carbon neutral in 2050. So in that sense, things are going well, certainly compared to most other places on the planet. On the other hand, I think most Nordic countries will agree that it is not going fast enough. We are not delivering fast enough, especially in the hard-to-abate sectors, especially with regards to some of the means of solutions that we know we need to bring up fast, up in scale and down in price. Hydrogen is one example of that, but I could also mention others. And then again, of course, goes without saying, especially in a setting like this, doesn't really matter what the EU does if the rest of the world don't deliver also.
Thank you. Next up, I want you all to join me in welcoming Minister of Economic Affairs in Finland, Sakari Puisto, and I hope I pronounced this right. Welcome. So we've heard in brief words what the EU is doing, and now I'm curious to hear about Finland and what you're doing towards climate positivity.
Yeah, so we have the carbon neutral target by 2035. That's quite early. It's not easy, but I would say that we have done a very good progress on, for instance, the cleanliness of the electricity. We have like plus 90% is clean energy. Also in the heating, district heating, we have like I think more than 70% of that is from non-fossil fuels. The industry is doing its part. We have 14 different industry sectors having they made like a carbon neutrality roadmaps, each sector individually on a voluntary basis in a coordinated fashion. So I think it's a great step forward, and they just updated these plans. So it's a very good industrial voluntary basis, but we have challenges, for instance, with the land use, the carbon sinks, and so. But I think that for the energy portfolio is good. It's very versatile. Nuclear baseload power. We have water, hydrogen power, lots of renewables, and industry is within us. Is moving to this target.
Thank you. And now I want you to help join me in welcoming Ole Thonke, Climate Ambassador for Denmark, on stage. Welcome, Ole. Can you now tell us about Denmark and what you are doing towards beyond carbon neutrality?
You have to hold it up here.
Ah,
Very good.
don't tell me why. I'll do it. No, thank you so much. And I actually thought I was going here in this panel with Denmark having a carbon neutrality target of 2045, but now sitting next to Finland, who has it in 35. Yeah, you have too many trees in Finland. In any case, we still consider ourselves very ambitious to have a net zero target in 2045. But maybe more importantly, the government has also decided to have a 110% reduction target by 2050. So that means at that time we need somehow to suck carbon out of the air, and that's a technology that we have right now, but it's very expensive. And you can do that in two ways. You can either do it through nature-based solutions, which we are working very hard on, or you can do it on carbon capture, the new technology, which we are also working hard on. But these are two new developments in Denmark that we really want to push forward in the coming decades up until 2050, and that we have to do, because if you listen to Guterres in the opening days here, he now publicly says, "Listen, guys, we are heading for an overshoot, and the current technology and policies will take us to at least 1.80 degrees of global warming. The UNEP gap report says 2.5. So we are going to need these technologies one way or the other to keep us on a fairly safe side on the tipping points."
Thank you. I want to start off with perspectives from Finland and from Denmark. You both showcased great ambition in lowering your emissions and going beyond, both with hard-to-abate sectors, like you described earlier, and also going into carbon capture or looking at what is possible outside of that. You are both of these nations are part of the group of Negative Emitters Alliance, who are pioneering climate positivity and aiming for net negative emissions soon after reaching net zero, which is quite soon also. So how is your country translating ambition into action, and what opportunities or challenges have you encountered along the way? If we start with Minister from Finland, Sakari.
Yeah, of course, there are lots of different kinds of measures. If I just take the financial side, for instance, we have the investment programs of 400 million euros, but most recently we closed a round for a tax incentive program, and I was quite surprised that we actually got applications worth over 22 billion euros for projects that had like a clean transition target and a tax incentive mechanism where we subsidize about 20% of the net profit after they are being built. So totally new projects. So that was quite a sort of positive surprise. I think there are lots of opportunities in the future for the carbon dioxide capture, especially the biogenic capture. So basically on top of the forest industry pipeline capturing the carbon. It's quite a neat idea because carbon dioxide, when dispersed in the atmosphere, it's harmful. It has a thermodynamic effect, but actually when it's from a point source, then it becomes an asset if it's collected and used in the hydrogen economy and so forth. So we have the timber industry, traditional timber industry. It's being renewed. It has lots of challenges because of the market conditions at the moment, but there are lots of possibilities there on the innovative side, but also in the carbon capture side. But sure, I mean, this 2035 target, it's highly ambitious. It's very ambitious. I think it's not clear if we actually manage it, but let's see. But I'm very trustful on this, like carbon capture, and very optimistic about it.
Thank you. And the same question goes to you about Denmark on the how Denmark is translating ambitions into action, looking at the opportunities and the challenges ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, obviously, it's very necessary to continue with all the mitigation efforts that we're going, and like what my Finnish colleague is saying, that it's looking very difficult and the targets are very ambitious. When Denmark first said that we wanted to have a target of 70% in 2030, everybody said no, that's not possible. You can't do it. And just this year, for the first time, our climate advisors have calculated that it actually looks possible now. We are on track to the 70% in 2030 due to many different reasons. One of them being that in Denmark, electric vehicles has become very popular. One, because they are not taxed as petrol vehicles, but also it's just a nicer car. And there's no maintenance, so it's less expensive for the people to do it. So I think more than 60% of all new vehicles in Denmark sold are electric vehicles. And we have to a large extent renewable energy electricity in our grid. So that means we are making progress on that. On the other technologies, one is on nature-based solutions. I think one of the hardest debate sectors is agriculture. And we recently did a tripartite agreement where we brought together the different areas of the Danish society with opposing views on this, with the agricultural farmers organizations, and then at the same time in the same room the environmental organizations, and told them to find a way forward on this, and they did. And they agreed to put carbon tax on agriculture, and at the same time to take out the most CO2 emitting farmlands of Denmark, which will be around 10%, being bought by the government and made into nature-based solutions, basically. So that's on that side. On the new technology side, subsidies to I call the carbon capture storage industry like an infant industry, to help that industry get on its feet and develop the technology. So we set aside 6 billion euros for projects in seeds. One of them going to, we have a huge cement plant in Denmark, which is obviously emitting a lot of CO2. But they will be able to now put a CCS plant on that, making green cement in the future. But obviously, this technology we have, but it's very expensive. But going to scale, that's hopefully where we will see the prices coming down, so that at some point it's a good business case to put it on. Thanks.
Thank you. And now for an EU perspective. 90% reduction for 2040 and ambitious plans in the Nordic regions and across Europe, actually. How is the EU supporting member states in translating these ambitious goals into action? And the same to you, what opportunities do you see ahead? And also challenges, what are the main challenges?
It's a bit weird for me to be here in this position because I actually negotiated the 70% target, got the idea for and presented with Finland the Gone Alliance at the COP. So I feel very proud when you give this speech, Ole, and congratulations for doing the job so well now in Denmark. So obviously the Nordic countries are leading. Look at these numbers. It's quite impressive. I do know that there are also possibilities with using nature-based solutions in some of the Nordic countries that other European countries will not have. But nonetheless, it doesn't really matter which way you analyze this. These targets and objectives are extremely ambitious. If we look at the challenges that some of our friends in other European countries have, they are of course quite different. But also here, even in the ones that are maybe facing the biggest barriers, we're seeing fast progress. So take a country like Poland, highly dependent on coal still, but they're moving fast away from coal and they're deploying renewable energy at a record speed. Look at a country like Germany. So yes, they are struggling right now, especially with helping the hard-to-abate sectors in their industry. But if you look at their actual targets, which they are on track at reaching, I feel it's okay still to say we, coming from a Nordic country, we have to acknowledge that doing something with a country with 80 million people, with such a big industrial sector, is very, very impressive. And they will, of course, have setbacks and challenges and barriers that the Nordic countries do not have. So what to do? Well, from a European perspective, it's about setting the right framework so that we have a level playing field. Our ETS system is the most efficient vehicle for that. Soon ETS 2 will follow. We have quite generous support schemes. There are areas where we are still lacking behind, and if you ask me what is the biggest barrier in Europe, it is that our electrification is not going fast enough, and it is that our grids are not being expanded fast enough, and that can be a bottleneck. So quite soon, in a couple of weeks actually, I will be presenting a strategy and a plan for how to change this, showing how we can indeed become much better connected in Europe, showing how much investment we need, but also showing the way of how to get there. We're not talking small amounts, we're talking huge amounts. The Nordics, again, have shown the benefits of being interconnected, but now that we are among friends, I think we can also be honest and say, even amongst very close friends, that all benefit from being connected. Sometimes we have disagreements. So this shows us the challenges for the rest of Europe.
Thank you. I think you...
To those who didn't catch that, that was a very diplomatic way of trying to talk around something that's a bit controversial right now.
Thank you. And please have some of that water. It's extremely hot in here. So it's, yeah.
I shouldn't have worn my long underwear today.
But you might have mentioned already some of the main points in which I'm going to ask you about now. But I think if we can use that chance to go a bit deeper into it. You talked about tax incentives and the ETS system, a lot of the technologies. But if you were to consider the most effective one, looking at policy, technology and initiative, what would be the most effective way in driving emission reduction beyond net zero? And how is it delivering tangible results? We also heard about EU's kind of approach to the grid now, and I'm excited for this that you're going to present connecting the grids better and looking at the grids, because we have been ramping up renewables and we can do that faster, but we also need the grids to work. So that also might maybe come into your question on if you see that as a problem in Finland and in Denmark, or just an opportunity. So the most effective policy initiative, technological initiative to drive us there beyond.
Maybe I comment on the grid issue, because I think we are lucky in that sense that we have a good energy source portfolio and a great grid, and the stability of the grid, it's an asset basically. We were just 2 weeks ago in one of the biggest investment forums in the world in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, in the Future Investment Initiative, and I just realized that within, I would say, 10-20 meters of me, there were probably in total asset management worth of at least $10 trillion. So these big players like Blackstone and BlackRock were there, and one of these CEOs was asked that what is the most valuable asset, and he actually named the grid. And especially in the times of AI and data center boom, I think you can invest like hundreds of billions of dollars in these technologies, but you need to have the grid, and that's something that we have in the Nordics, and that's a real asset for us. On the future technologies, I think there are plenty. I think many of these technologies, even though they are not branded as clean itself, but they can like increase the efficiency of trade or like indirectly be highly beneficial also regarding climate change. But just to take one example, I would name fusion energy. It takes still quite a bit of time, but I think it's highly interesting. And before that, the small modular reactors within a framework of, let's say, 5 years or so.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. From my side, maybe start at the consumer level, because I think what we can see in Denmark, which is really driving forward electrification, which need to these net zero targets, is consumer incentives, like we've had with the vehicles in Denmark. The same thing is happening on heating. I used to have a gas-fired heating system in my house, and I recently changed that to an electric one, because the technology is actually there, and the prices are going down on that as well. And as soon as it's less expensive to go electric heating, people will do that. And then, of course, as government, you can do a bit of regulation and incentivize it. I got $3,000 of subsidy for this thing to make it a less expensive investment for me, and that tipped the balance. And very soon, when the technology starts to evolve, we don't need to give subsidies. It will just be less expensive. I was at a very interesting session a couple of days ago around tipping points, and we know all the negative points, but they actually started to explore the positive tipping points on technologies, because when the technologies are better than fossil fuel and less expensive than fossil fuel, the choice is easy. And the economy and the consumer choices will fall in that basket, and we will reach another tipping point on these technologies. And it has happened already on electricity generation. It is happening right now on EVs, both two-wheelers and four-wheelers. It's happening recently on heating systems. And time, the expert says, will also happen on fuels, for instance. So little by little, we'll see these tipping points, and that will be a huge game changer both in Nordic countries, but also for Europe and the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's great that you mentioned those tipping points, because we've been hearing a lot about negative tipping points, but yeah, the positive tipping points are also there. If we look at the EU on the effective measures, what do you consider might be the effective measures? And maybe taking on to what Ole was describing now, what can kind of bring those balls over the line, over the tipping point in a sense?
Okay, so now probably it's time to be the devil's advocate. So I'm probably responsible myself for what I'm going to criticize a little bit now. So to subsidize private consumers so that they change their source of heating into either district heating or an individual electrical heating pump is obviously a good thing if you can afford it. But probably we also in the Nordic countries need to realize that we are very fortunate when Norway had the most generous scheme on the planet where they would actually pay people to buy an electric car. I know that the ambassador of Denmark is struggling with the very low salary that the state pays him, but nonetheless, I think probably most countries would think, okay, so you're subsidizing an ambassador. Hope it's okay that I tease you a little bit, Ole, with a huge amount for doing something that is extremely good for his private economy the next 20 years. I made the scheme, so I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying that's probably not a model that we can sell to everybody. So what we need to do is make sure that the solutions that are out there are of such a benefit for private consumers, for industry, for public buildings, that really it would be an extremely bad business case not to do these things. Of course, we can use public money also in countries that does not have as much room to do subsidy schemes as we maybe have in the Nordic countries. Even in those countries, there might actually be room for de-risking investments, for making schemes with financial institutions that make it feasible for private homeowners to get the mortgage or the loan that they need to make these investments. Because looking at energy efficiency, in average for private homes, investments take 3 to 5 years to pay back. For industry, 5 to 7 years. That's a very, very good business case. And all banks should just say yes at face value, which they don't. So it's up to us to use the limited public money that we have, whether it's national pockets that pay or it's EU money, to de-risk investments, to use these money where the market will not be sufficient. Carbon capture and storage, carbon capture and utilization is a technology that we spoke about earlier. It's a very good example of this, because we know for a fact that no new technology will reach the scale and reduce the prices sufficiently without being subsidized in the start. When we built the first offshore wind farm in Denmark in 1991, people were shaking their heads. That's never going to be lucrative. It's never going to be competitive. And it wasn't for some time. Now, of course, it is. And the same will go for CCS and CCUS and other technologies. We need to be able to support it, and we need to also then help the countries that might not be in such a fortunate situation. And then again, I also think it's a completely valid political objective to have for the Nordic countries that, yes, we do this because it's also good for our own economies, but it's also our way of contributing to the global fight against climate change. And maybe it's even more important than what we reduce ourselves, because when looking at I always use the example that Denmark, it's 0.8% or 0.7% of the global emissions, so does it even matter? Well, maybe not so much the actual emissions, but the fact that we, to reduce those emissions, develop new technologies develop new ways of working together, also state, private, public. And if others can feel inspired by that, then that might be the biggest difference that we can make.
Thank you. I'm going to give you a chance, Ole, to respond to this, and also Sakari. It kind of relates to the question that I have here on what we can do as the Nordic region. We have been known for unique collaboration on climate matters and maybe a bit unique perspective, but as you said, we might be a bit privileged with our energy system, resources, and relatively small populations in many places and with large land. So if we look at what we can kind of bring to the global action on climate and kind of bring what we're doing at home and make sure that it's helping in the acceleration and scaling up of solutions elsewhere as well. From your perspective, what could we do? And since you directed the question and even talked about Ole's salary, I'm just gonna let you start. So.
I can start. But I actually, I agree. It's as an economist, it's the first page of the books. There's a thing called infant industries, and I think you can compare CCS to infant industries, but also the electric heating systems as has been infant industries, and it says in the economic textbooks that to develop the technologies and to make them competitive, they need support in the beginning. But the key thing is the governments need to step away when they are compatible. When they can compete against the other technologies. And that's where we are on many of these green technologies right now. And that's when the tipping point is reached, if I can put it that way. So I think that's really key. But I think also, Denmark, we started the wind turbine adventure, and it was very expensive for the Danish consumers in many years. But now wind turbines are all over the world. It's a competitive industry. You have them onshore, you have them offshore, and it's really a key driver in renewable energy or at a global level. So I think, Denmark has, let me put it, been part of that technological advancement that we are seeing in the world. And just imagine if we didn't have wind power or solar power today, with the demand for electricity increasing as it is. If we had to fill that with fossil electricity, we would be in real problems right now. Then this COP, I think, would attract a lot more attention than it is right now. On the negative emissions, like Dan mentioned, that Denmark established an initiative some years back called GON, where together with Finland and Panama, if I remember correctly, as the founders of it, where we are a group of countries who has the same ambition on being negative emitters, and then the whole idea is to share both technologies, regulation, policies, ideas to move this forward. And we are expanding that group. We are also working with other groups who have similar ambitions, and I think that's really key to drive that international collaboration forward and to share technologies and ideas. So I think that's a thing that we really can contribute with in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Sakari, over to you.
Yeah. Now you can hear. Yeah. So yes, I agree that I think in the Nordic countries we can be quite lucky. We are quite lucky of our sort of circumstances. Talking about the subsidies, I would still like to point out that, for instance, even though in Finland we have lots of great businesses and companies, but actually the fiscal public economy is not doing that well. So we are running a deficit of more than 10 billion euros annually. And if you just asked me like 10 years ago that how would I react if we had a deficit of 10 billion euros, I would be scared almost. So and this puts a limitation also on the fiscal stimulus packages for investments subsidies, but also for the households. And that's why I think it's ever more important to also put into action that kind of financial instruments that can provide a win-win situation. For instance, our new tax incentive model is like that. It provides a tax incentive for a project that will be built in the future, and also on the profit only, so on the capital tax. I think another thing about the subsidies on the industrial level is that the system is getting so complicated. The electricity market, for instance, now I think there's a discussion in Sweden about financing, for instance, the nuclear power with the contract of different types of contracts, and those are quite sort of tricky concepts and have long-standing effects. Though I have to say that I have like sympathies towards these models, but they are complicated. So I think what the Nordic countries can bring to the world is essentially the carbon handprints.
Thank you. I think we have to say thanks to Dan Jørgensen. We can continue a bit more and maybe open up for questions. So absolutely, it was a pleasure having you here, Commissioner.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, guys. Keep up the good work.
Thanks to you.
Yes, thank you.
But if I could keep you two gentlemen for just 5-6 minutes longer, and you as well. I know everybody is really longing for that air conditioning, but still. And opening up for 1 or 2 questions from the audience, if there are any. Use this opportunity. Yeah, we have one.
Thank you. Chris Sherwood from the Negative Emissions Platform. I was actually hoping to ask this question to the Commissioner, but he walked out seconds before I got the microphone. But maybe you could comment. I was going to ask him about the upcoming package of legislative measures that the European Union is planning for the summer of next year, which will include integration of carbon removals or negative emissions into the ETS, and possibly other measures as well, including carbon removal targets for the European Union. So I don't know if you'd like to comment on those, and in particular on the impact that you hope that will have on the market and the signal that will send to the market about how serious Europe is about negative emissions.
I don't know it in detail. The only thing I could say is like spontaneously that we've been promoting the use of the technical carbon sinks in these models, but I don't think I'm so concrete as you asked.
I don't have an answer for you either, but it was a really good question. And there's one question there. Let's take that one and then start wrapping up.
Thank you for a good presentation and talk. Torbjørn from Danske Bank. Earlier on in another panel debate, we were discussing a little bit what you were also alluding to here with the risk kind of sharing part, also from governments, so they can actually activate private capital to fund some of these developments. And we were discussing a specific case where Riksgälden from Sweden was giving guarantees and enabling private institutions to come in. But then we also talked about, but many of these things that need to happen and be invested in are not kind of in specific countries. Is there an opportunity, or could we have maybe a Nordic kind of engine that could start giving these credit guarantees to enable different types of investments that you're speaking to?
Yeah, so I guess you are asking, for instance, we have the export credit agencies and these national promotion agencies with the specialized financed missions. So if we can combine these efforts, a bit like what we have the Nordic Investment Bank, but with the sort of export credit guarantee mechanisms, I I think so, and I think in the industrial, for instance, the construction business, they have that kind of system. So I think it's worth looking at a blended finance type of measures.
Maybe I know that the Nordic Development Fund also is actually working on some schemes. At the same time, we have a Nordic collaboration called the Investment Mobilization Alliance, where both Denmark, Norway, and Sweden have a guarantee scheme, and we are now pursuing ways to combine our guarantees for either MDBs to increase their lending, but for specific areas like in Africa or renewable energy in Asia or capital funds like that, where we say we give a foundation of a first loss guarantee. How much private sector capital can you raise on that for investments abroad our region? And I think that has potential. So we don't go alone, but we go as Nordics.
You want to comment on this as well?
Yeah, I commented already.
And I think, we should wrap this up. Maybe the one really final question. Going from now, COP30 and home from Berlin, what do you see as the next critical steps ahead? And what do you take with you? It's just the final notes, and then we... Ole, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think a key thing right now where a lot of technologies are tipping. Okay. The technology is tipping is so that the communication. Is this better? Yeah. That the communication around these issues are factual based. We see so much mis and disinformation right now, both on how expensive the green transition is, how that it's not really working, the temperature increase is not so bad, etc., etc. So, look what happened with some of the offshore wind parks in the US, for instance. So that is really going to be a crucial topic for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I think last year in Baku COP29 it was called the Finance COP. So, but I'm a technologist by background, so I can agree on that. It's actually also my first day here, so it's a bit too early to say that. But
well, thank you. It's been lovely talking with you. Great honor, great discussion, and thank you to the audience as well. Go and get some water and some cool air. Thank you.